Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of The Curious Cat. I'm going to speak a little bit about real estate today. If you know me in person, you know I've been talking about this for quite some time. I've been telling people for at least a decade. I was pretty early on my call. I thought the debt bubble would pop back in 2008 when we had the whole banking crisis down in the US, but it kept going. I really didn't see that they would create as much currency as they did, and they were able to paper over the crisis. And so a lot of people just kind of stopped paying attention and figured everything was good and it had returned to normal and everything was just going to keep going, which it did. However, what happened is with all that currency creation, we didn't solve the problem. We only made it worse because now there's all kinds of debt and currency in circulation, and we've experienced pretty big inflation already. And we're going to see a lot more in the future, most likely, when all of this new currency that they created to paper over the COVID crisis, once that really hits, we'll see another inflationary period where assets will get pushed further and further out of reach for your average individual. So those are my thoughts. And here in Canada, it's just absolutely insane, the price of property, the price of homes. Your average home is, in any kind of metro city, it's upwards of $1 million. And even in the smaller towns, I'm in British Columbia, and here, even in the smaller towns, smaller cities, you're looking at, 500,000, 600,000 and up for just an entry-level detached home. So it's just unbelievable how much debt that is, how much money that is. And the banks have really made a big push in the last few years to get more and more people into these mortgages and signing up to these contracts to be obligated to pay back that kind of money. And a lot of people don't really understand how much money that actually is, especially younger people that haven't really worked for that long. They haven't worked for, 1 or 2 or 3 decades. So they don't really have an idea how hard it is and how long it takes to earn and save that kind of cash. Even working a decent wage, like I've been in trades for my whole life, earning $70K a year, pretty modest income. It's really kind of, well, it used to be middle class. Now you're getting pushed into poverty at those levels. But so even at that kind of a yearly income, you're lucky if you can put away 10 grand. And I'm really good with money. I don't spend much money at all. I pretty much save everything that I earn as much as I can. I live as cheap as I can. I live really simple and I put away the rest. And it's really hard for me to tuck away 10 grand a year. So when you look at that and you look at $500,000 for an entry-level home, well, that's, 50 years at best that it would take you just to pay the principal of that, let alone the interest payments. And the thing is, when you're borrowing that kind of money, 2/3 in the beginning of your payment are going to just servicing the interest payments on it. So that's how much money you're paying to the bankers that loan you this money. And that is money you'll never get back. So it's pretty much like paying rent. You're renting the debt or the capital essentially from the bankers to be able to purchase that kind of home. So these people are highly over leveraged. The real estate market here is all on leverage. We're massively overinflated, and the reason for that is a lot of reasons, but we had a ton of foreign money come in the last while. A lot of it went into Vancouver. There's all kinds of dirt coming up on how it was a lot of drug money that came in, a lot of Chinese money that came in, and they were basically able to buy real estate with these shell corporations. So they're just these numbered corporations that come in from, say, China. They buy up real estate and the government knows absolutely nothing about them. They don't know where the money came from. They don't know who owns it or anything like that. So there's no questions asked. And basically it was a big scam, and a lot of the politicians were involved, and it's starting to come to light now. And I think over the next few years, more and more of the facts will come out, and we'll see kind of what happened there. But essentially all this dirty drug money and criminal money came into the province and into the country in general because of our slack laws and our non-existent regulation when it comes to purchasing these properties with shell corporations. So all these criminals were essentially able to launder their money. So they come in with dirty money, they buy the real estate, and then real estate was increasing in value pretty quickly over the last 10 years. So they get to make all kinds of profit with it. And then when they go and sell it, now they've cleaned their money because they say, oh, we made all of our money in Canadian real estate. And now it looks like they earn the money legit, but it's just not the case. So a lot of that is what pushed these prices up in places like Metro Vancouver and Toronto. And then what that did is a lot of the original families and people that lived in Vancouver, they sold their homes because all of a sudden your home doubles, triples, quadruples in price. So a lot of people sell there and then they move out to the smaller cities in British Columbia and they buy out there, and that pushes property prices up there. So the whole thing has really been overinflated, and also a lot of it is through the issuance of all this debt. They made debt really easy to obtain, and they lent out astronomical amounts of currency to all of the Canadians, and they made it seem like it was a sure thing and you couldn't lose. And so that liquidity that they pumped into the market through the form of debt and currency creation essentially added to the fire. So it added to this exponential rise in property prices. And the reason I think it's highly overvalued is because you have to compare it to wages. So you have to look, what is your average Canadian earning? And they're not earning very much. Very few people are earning $30 an hour right now. And at $30 an hour, you're never going to be able to pay that off. It's going to take you an entire lifetime just to get an entry-level home that probably needs another $100,000. So you're highly exposed. You're kind of, all your eggs are in one basket. You're going to be mortgage poor. All your payments are going to be going to essentially pay that mortgage off. And it's really hard to get ahead because all your capital is tied up. All your time's going to, like I said, paying that mortgage off and working towards that. And a lot of your free time and your money is also going to be going to renovating and trying to improve the house because it's such a piece of shit. So these people are buying these shitholes and they're not in construction, so they don't really know much about homes. I see it all the time. All these 30-year-olds or something that have no idea about construction. They go in and they look and they buy this crappy home because it's all they can afford, and they get in and they buy some $400,000 home that needs $100,000 and it's full of asbestos and mold and the plumbing needs redoing, and it's just, they just have no idea what they're getting into. And I've seen it as well with land, where they buy land but they don't even know anything about making sure there's water on the property, seeing if there's power. So they find out, oh, I have to drill a well. Well, a well is $30,000, and sometimes you don't even find water, so you got to keep drilling. And so they're bankrupt before they even are able to get onto the land, and then their dream is quickly shattered, and then they end up throwing it back on the market, and all the bankers get to make more money off it, and the politicians make more money off it by taxing you every time you buy and sell and move around. So it's really a big racket, and not too many people are creating resilience because they're just over leveraged on this debt and all their eggs are in one basket. Well, when we have a crisis hit or a black swan like we did with COVID, and all of a sudden a lot of the people don't have jobs, well, how are you going to service this debt? And then if you've made a commitment to pay all this money to the banks, then that's where all your money's going. If you have any money left, or if you're getting some kind of handout from the government, it's all going to pay your debt. And then how are you going to feed your family? So to me, it's just this big thing of pushing the American dream of home ownership. But really, is it worth the price where you're not going to be able to afford your home, or you're going to be forced to eat sardines and white bread? Just to get by because all your money's going to servicing the mortgage. I was just talking to somebody, they bought a house and they don't even have hot showers. They're that tight on their mortgage. They're that tight with the amount of money they earn and how much it's costing to live in this house. They have one shower a week and they don't even have a hot shower. Well, in the summer at least. But they really can't even afford the cost of the water. That's how tight they are on their monthly bills. So your quality of life goes way down. And just to say you own a house, and you don't even own it, you're paying a mortgage on it, and the second you miss that payment, then the bank's going to come in and repossess it. So you don't own it until you fully have it paid off. And even then, you still don't own it because you're at the mercy of their property tax. And they can come in and raise the property tax anytime they want. And the other thing they can do is they can really mess you up with insurance. So we're seeing that in Vancouver, where I've been hearing reports that they've doubled and in some cases tripled the cost of insurance on these condos in the last year. So all of a sudden your insurance cost goes from $2,000 to $6,000 right at a time where jobs are drying up and Airbnb is drying up and all that. And that's another thing, the Airbnb. It's a lot of people did the math on buying these homes, and they did the math assuming they could rent out the suite or a room in there, 2/3 of the time at $150 a night, $200 a night. And then all of a sudden COVID hits and now there's no one traveling and very few people are renting Airbnbs, and they've got it all geared up for an Airbnb, but now they don't have that income. So now how are they going to pay this massive mortgage? I just think it's hilarious because every Canadian I talk to is all in on real estate. Or not every Canadian, but the bulk. 75% of Canadians own their home. And over 50% of our GDP comes from real estate now. So that over half of the country's wealth is being generated directly or indirectly from real estate. And when you look around and you can't get into the market for any less than, $300,000, $400,000. Even raw land now is $200,000 and up. And you have to move pretty far out to get something like that. And you don't get much. There's no water in place. There's no power. There's no septic. And now the regulations are all so high. You want to put in a septic system, it can be upwards of $30,000 here. You want to drill a well, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. So now you're 60 grand in, and you still got to bring in power. That's another 10 grand, maybe even 20, depending on what you're looking for and all that. So it's a lot of things that people don't consider. So I think it's all going to come tumbling down in Canada. I think prices are way overvalued. There's going to be a point where people realize that we don't have, as a country, the economic means to pay off this kind of debt. You look at the US down south, they have much more going on. They have a lot of industry down there, a lot of innovation, a lot of big companies are based out of the US, and they have a lot of industry and a lot of factories and a lot of businesses that are all there producing goods and services. And so they have, in my opinion, more economic resilience, and property is way cheaper down there. I was just watching another guy's channel, Mike Martin's. Check out his channel if you haven't already. I just kind of got turned on from one of my subscribers, turned me on to him. I've been checking out his channel. I really like it. But he was kind of looking at properties down south, and you can buy like 5 acres, 20 acres for like $20,000, some at 50 grand. And there's a lake on it that has fish, and you get, 10, 20 acres. And you're right by, you're not too far from a bigger city where you can go get all your supplies and that. So that's just way more affordable. And here in Canada, everyone believes it's only going to go up, but prices are already $500,000 and up to get in the market. So how is that possible? How are we going to pay that back? How are people committing to this? How do they think they're going to be able to pay this back? That's what I wonder. So let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. You think it's just going to keep going? You think we're going to be able to afford this kind of debt? It's just absolutely wild. I think everyone's got their head up their ass personally. And I mean, it's one thing if you can afford it, if you've got an excellent job, maybe you work as a nurse or something, and your job's really secure, then and you have cash and you're good at saving and you have a bunch of cash in the bank, then sure, maybe go into real estate. And I mean, we all need somewhere to live, right? So you don't really have that many options, but at the same time, you could make some sacrifices and try and grow your capital first, and then buy something smaller and more within your range once you have a little more capital. Because if you're coming in and it's all leveraged on debt and you're coming in with the minimal down payment and you have an amortization period of 30, 40 years, well, 30 years I think is the max you're doing now, but it's wild. You're going to be working your whole life to try and pay this debt off, and for what? Just to say you own your home, you know? So, I mean, like I said, there's very few other options. You have to get pretty creative. I feel kind of backed into a corner personally. I sold real estate way too early. I sold in 2010 because I thought the whole thing was going to crash then. But there is something to be said about being liquid. So having your money in cash and gold, silver, Bitcoin, things like that, that's one way, because at least if things get bad, you can move around. You can look for opportunity. Once this debt bubble pops, there's going to be all kinds of deals to be had, in my opinion. We're already starting to see it, but real estate's still going up. That's the crazy part. So I think it's with all this currency creation, it's all getting pumped into the market and it's got to go somewhere, and everyone still thinks it's all about real estate. So in they go, signing up and signing these big contracts with the banksters, criminals. You're going to see it's a big racket. That's my opinion anyways. I could be wrong. So personally, I like to stay liquid, and I'm going to watch for opportunity. I might start buying a little bit of stock and just playing with just a little bit of cash. I don't like to risk too much in the stock market. I feel like it kind of is stuck in there to some extent. And all your profits are in these government currencies, which are losing their purchasing power anyways. So, and you really got to know what you're doing. There's so much high frequency trading in the markets that it's really hard to beat these algorithms that they use, and the supercomputers. They have it all figured out, and they put in their trading offices right next to the main exchange, and they link it up with fiber optics, so they get to trade in the nanosecond and jump in line in front of all of the sucker buyers like you and I. So they just essentially skim off wealth off the top of all these trades. So it's pretty hard to beat that kind of stuff. So I mean, I don't like trying to play a game where I feel like the odds are stacked against me. I feel like the odds are stacked against us all anyways, no matter what. But you have to try something, right? So my thoughts are diversify. So I'm glad I have cash, I have gold, I have silver, I have Bitcoin, and I'm looking to get land. But I think it might be a little premature. There's so much action in the Canadian real estate market right now that I don't want to be jumping in. Things are actually going up in price because we have all the people leaving the city and getting nervous. So I think land prices are going to get pushed up outside of the cities as people look to leave these overinflated cities that really aren't sustainable anyways, even at the best of times. And I don't really want to buy into that. So I kind of want to just suck it up, make some sacrifices, and wait until more people are selling. And who knows? I wish I could buy land down south. That's really attractive when you can get, several acres, just beautiful looking properties, flat, lakes, rivers, all that kind of stuff for under 100 grand. Just unbelievable. A lot of people are scared to live down there, but there's a lot of patriots down there and true believers in freedom, and who are willing to fight for their freedoms and stand up against the government and the tyranny going on. So yeah, it might be a little more wild down there, but at least you can be a little more sustainable and not be totally at the mercy of these bankers and signing your life away to massive amounts of debt that you'll probably never repay, and basically really limiting your options. You're really kind of backing yourself into a corner when you're signing up for that much debt, in my opinion, because you're not going to have any extra capital to do anything else with. So when good opportunity comes up, you don't have any capital because you're all tied up. Every little penny you earn goes to the bankers. And so you don't have that freedom to invest in things like Bitcoin when it comes along, or gold or silver, or to stockpile food for the winter coming up, because you don't have any extra cash sitting around. So that's one of the advantages to living cheap. I've always done it. I just sucked it up and had roommates. It's horrible. I'm not going to lie. Having roommates is horrible. I don't think it's ever gone well. It's never fun having somebody else live in your space and sharing a space together. But I did it because that way I could have cheap rent. I would, rent the house myself, rent a 2 or 3 bedroom house, and then sublet a room to somebody else. And so that's one way you can live cheap. I have lived in an RV. I lived in a little Westphalia for a year and a half, and I currently renovated another RV. So now I have a 32-foot motorhome that I've been living in this summer. And so I haven't been paying any rent this summer, which has been nice. And just kind of being on my folks' land and a few campsites and moving around a bit. And that, so I have to get a plan in place for this winter. So just kind of looking at options, but my thought is just keep our expenses low and put away as much capital as you can, and use that capital right now to kind of stockpile some food and get ready. I mean, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling a little bit of anxiety with the winter approaching. I want to have a freezer full. I don't even know where I'm going to live yet. So I might have to suck it up and rent a suite off my folks, and not where I want to be at this age, but at the same time, I'm willing to make sacrifice because I don't want to get pushed into poverty. I mean, I'm already on the brink of poverty. I think many of us are, because of the way the dollars are devaluing. So I personally think Canadian real estate is way overpriced. It's a big scam, in my opinion. They're trying to get everyone to buy in. And I was speaking to another lady just the other day she works for a bigger company, and they're a really profitable company, and they've been around for 40 years and sounds very progressive and all that. And she was telling me how an interesting trend is going on, where basically in the last year, every one of their employees that's, in their late 20s or early 30s came in and got them to sign a thing for the bank so they could get a mortgage. So I think this is kind of the final push. We're seeing all the suckers buy in right at the top. Like I said, I could be wrong. I mean, I think we are going to see inflation again. So things could keep going, but it doesn't make sense to me to buy something for $500,000. It's so much money, and it's going to take so much of your capital to hold on to something. And that's just an entry level outside of the cities. If you want to buy in Vancouver or something, I think it's like 1.6 million just to get a tiny little detached home somewhere. So who's got that kind of money? Even the lawyers and the doctors are getting pushed out of Vancouver. Even they can't afford. So who are you to think you can afford? And you're probably earning, 60, 70, 80K a year, and you think you're going to be able to pay this kind of debt off? Even in the best of times, you're going to struggle. So if we go into crisis and people lose their jobs, it's not going to take long. Already, a huge portion of our mortgages are in deferral here in Canada, and down in the States, it's the same. And if they force another lockdown, we're going to have all kinds of businesses that are going to go under, especially in the restaurant industry and tourism, and a lot of the Airbnbs, different stuff like that. So that's going to cause all kinds of financial trouble for people and put downward pressure on the real estate market. So I think right now we're seeing a little micro trend where we're having a lot of people that are moving to get out of the cities. So they're moving to the smaller towns and they're buying it up, and everyone's kind of nervous, so they're moving around and that's why we're seeing a lot of action in the real estate market. But I think that'll probably start slowing down in the next year or two. I think it's going to take a year or two. I think people will probably be moving around for the next 2 years. And once that all settles, and then they come to the realization of reality, where they bought in some little shitty small town, and all of a sudden all the restaurants are gone and the grocery store is struggling to get by, and a bunch of the businesses go under, and then you realize it's just a bunch of rednecks you don't get along with, and you realize, you're a city boy and you don't even know how to chop your own wood, and now you have 10 acres to tend to, and you don't get along with anyone in your town because it's hard to relate. I've been looking in these small towns. You go in, it's like the last one I was checking out, full of a bunch of bikers. Nothing against bikers, but a bunch of Hell's Angels. I mean, I don't think that's going to resonate with everyone. So yeah, you look around, the prices seem cheap, and you think, oh yeah, that's a good deal, I'll go buy there. But have you lived there? Have you seen the underbelly? Have you seen the reality of living out there? Have you experienced the seclusion? I've been living out of the cities for the last year and a bit, and it's hard. I don't have any community. There's no one. I don't even know anyone out here. So wait till you go through a year of that, a year of not meeting anyone, and a year of it's just you and your partner, and see how strong your relationship is. I think a lot of people will end up in divorce personally, and realizing it's not cut out. It's not what they thought it was going to be. And then they're stuck trying to sell again, losing more money, shifting around again. And it's hard work. It's hard work being way out, and it's hard to have community. There's all kinds of struggles that come along with it. You can't just walk to the store and walk to all these restaurants and get food. There's one corner store, and you're at the mercy of what they carry. Some, shitty produce that's 4 days old, and they're charging 4 times the normal price for it. Well, you don't really have any options, so you got to pay it. So yeah, if you think you're going to be all sustainable and grow all your own food, sure, that's one thing, but that costs a ton of money too. So you better bring an extra 400, 500K. You set up your solar, set up your water system, buy all your animals, all the feed, all that. And then it takes all your time, and still you need, good luck producing all your own food. You better be a really good gardener or a really good hunter. So those are just some of my thoughts. I don't think people always think this stuff through. I think a lot of it's just quickly making decisions. So we'll see. I'm waiting till something feels right. And right now, the only thing that feels right is sitting patiently. And I'm a patient person. I've been sitting on my silver and my gold for over a decade now. I didn't sell, where many people bought and then they sold the lows. Well, patience is something that not too many people have, and a lot of people want to own that home right now, and they don't want to have the patience to try and grow capital or create a really prosperous business or something before kind of signing up to that kind of debt. They still have a job. They're still working for some other company, so they're at the mercy of that company, and they're at the mercy of potential layoffs and all that. So we're seeing that here in Canada, in Alberta, the oil-rich province, where everyone bought these massive homes and signed up for massive amounts of debt and bought into overinflated real estate because everyone was making easy money. And now that oil went down, there's all kinds of deals there. That's one place in Canada you can get cheap homes. I was looking an hour outside of the city, you can get a home for $39,000. So you just got to be able to stick out 8 months of winter and not have any mountains around or very few lakes or anything to be able to fish or swim and all that. So yeah, of course, everyone wants to live in British Columbia here in Canada, but you pay the price. Unless you come with a lot of cash. BC, bring cash, right? So it's really your average person's getting pushed out of the market here. And I think that's going to be a trend that continues. Very few millennials are able to afford. Those that manage to get a mortgage, I don't think they're very, well, I don't want to insult people, but I don't know if everyone's necessarily done all the math. I don't think a lot of these people have worked very long. I don't think they realize how hard it is to make lots of money and pay this kind of stuff off. And they also don't realize that interest rates could be jacked at any point. They can come in and put it back up to 22% like they did in the 80s, which would shake all kinds of people out of the market. I don't think they're going to do that. I think we're going to go negative here, and they're going to attack the savers next, because the savers are the last people with resilience here that essentially are somewhat escaping the enslavement that's going on of the middle class. And so I think that's the last pillar of our freedom here in Canada, are the savers and the people that manage to create more economic prosperity for themselves. And a lot of the boomers are the people that manage to save a lot of the dollars and currency and create abundance for themselves. So that's why these bankers want to come in now and go after them. So they're pushing for this cashless society so that they can come in, get everyone into a cashless society. So essentially you have to use their digital currency that they issue. So there's nowhere for you to run. And then they'll push rates to go negative, so that essentially if you have savings, you'll have to pay them to have those savings. And if you have debt, they're going to pay you to take on the debt. Sounds insane, but they're already doing it in several countries. And I think Canada's next on the hit list. I think that's what's coming down the line, is pushing for cashless. Because if they have cashless, then you have nowhere to run. If they are going to charge you to have money in the bank, you could, if we still had cash, you could pull your money out and at least hide it, bury it, put it somewhere, do something. And then you wouldn't have to pay to have that money. But if they go cashless, very few people are going to have that ability. You essentially, the only option would be to buy something like Bitcoin, gold, or silver, and to try and avoid the attack on your wealth that way. So lots going on. I just find it fascinating. I like to stay curious and just observe what's going on, listen to other people's opinions, and just have patience and not make any rash decisions. So I'm just going to kind of sit with it all and watch how it unfolds. And in the meantime, I want to prep for the winter, get a bunch of food together, fill the freezers. Just applied for my gun license. So I'm going to start, the goal is to hunt this fall and hopefully get a deer and some fish and that. So just have a bunch of food tucked away. And I think that's the best we can do. When it comes down to it, food and water are a lot more important than having a home or money. So that's my thoughts. I'm going to watch this all play out, and I think there's going to be some screaming deals in a year or two in Canada once the bubble pops. I just don't think it's going to keep going, but I could be wrong. And if it does keep going, then I'll be looking to move countries, probably see if I can find an American wife or something and move down there and get some of that beautiful property for under 100,000. That's much more attractive to me. And in the meantime, you grow that kind of capital, you just go down and buy it cash, and then you're not at the mercy of these bankers. Throw a mobile home on there, pull my RV on site, and I'm good. And then I start building a house. So that's the plan. We'll see how it goes. This is the start of a channel, new channel. So if you want to come along